Jolly. You cooling off a little bit?
Yeah.
Look, you know I got my fan. You need a fan tonight?
I can manage.
You sure?
Yeah, this was a little rough day, but
Little rough. But tonight, you guys, we are introducing. I know the producer is lying,
right.
but tonight,
Yo. Yeah.
first and foremost, we are running a little behind schedule tonight, so forgive us for the tartiness. But here we are in a whole new space. Well, this is really the same space, it's just the upper level of the space. But this space was designed for the voice of children suffering in silence. So tonight, Beyonka Studios is presenting through the Recipe Podcast the voice of children suffering in silence, which is an entity of the outreach center that I have here in Baltimore. And the reason I have the voice of children suffering in silence is because a lot of children, I don't know about you, so we're going to learn about you tonight, but a lot of children, like myself, I'll say, had their voices silenced as a child, and they went through trauma, emotional, mental, spiritual, religious, and sexual traumas that they did not know how to process, and they never were able to find healing, and so they grew up with that trauma. So I decided to open up an outreach center here in Baltimore and start the Voice of Children Suffering in Silence so that I could be a voice for children who suffer in silence, and so that I can teach children how to use their voice. So tonight we are introducing that by being in this space that has been designed for them, and we will be talking about trauma tonight: religious trauma, sexual trauma, childhood trauma, all types of trauma. So if you're watching via Facebook tonight, then you will see that there's a poll at the top. Please feel free to answer that poll and let us know if it's something that you have experienced in your life, whether it be sexual trauma, religious trauma, childhood trauma, if it is. And you can also tell us how you dealt with it or how you are dealing with it. But tonight the floor is being given to my co-host, and I'm just going to follow his lead. Okay, so welcome, Jolly. What's up?
Well, it's a lot going on, and like you started off by saying, like, the trauma and stuff like that that's been happening or has happened within inside this community, the Muslim community in Baltimore, stuff like that. We not here to cause anything. I'm not trying to open up any past wounds or anything like that or whatever. But it is a couple stories, maybe one or two, that some people have shared with me over the past couple of years or whatever, and I kind of just wanted to
touch it.
Just touch it just a little bit. But again, like I said, I'm not trying to open up any wounds or anything like that. So, disclaimer: I'm not going to mention any names or stuff like that about the stories and stuff like that that was told. But I would like to.
Would like to touch on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're different. So I just want to speak on just some words that you just used. I'm being an advocate for children, being a voice for the voiceless. I think it's important that we address everything that we've gone through. And sometimes, people come to us and they unload on us and they give us their stories. And then their stories and their trauma.
Real quick while you talk.
Absolutely. Go ahead, take your shoes off. Wanting us to go through hurt and pain and not wanting us to feel their pain, but just because they need to unleash it. A lot of times in not just the black community, but the Muslim community, everything is kind of kept. And you're also taught to be quiet. You're
Absolutely.
also taught to keep things inside the community because you never want to make the community look bad. You don't want to make the religion look bad. You don't want to make your parents look bad. It's a whole domino effect. And so you're taught to be quiet. So when a person comes to you and they're unleashing on you and it becomes a part of your trauma and you have a moment like right now where you're about to share some stories that were brought to your attention that you think should be addressed and acknowledged.
Absolutely.
I don't think that you are opening any wounds intentionally, but I don't think that you should be apologetic or even have a disclaimer on opening wounds, because sometimes those wounds need to be opened in order for them to be healed. And it could even be for you. It could even, this right here prayerfully will be therapeutic for you as well, so that you are able to, like, because I heard some, I got some bad stories too, but I heard some, and I've been carrying this with me for a long time, and I know other people probably can relate. Somebody comes and gives you something that you be carrying for a long time, and you become silent because you're afraid to tell somebody, like, dang, I'm scared to say something to somebody about this because I don't want that person to know I said it. So now it has become your trauma. So being in a moment where you are finally able to have the conversation and talk about it, and I love that you're doing it in a respectful manner where you're not mentioning any names. You're just simply talking about things that have been brought to you that is now a part of your life. And addressing it, not just because you need to release that trauma yourself now, but you also know that there may be children who may be enduring that now. And there could have been children who endured it and just felt like they are alone. And the best part of the voice of children suffering in silence and the healing journey that children are able to go on, and parents and adults who have children suffering in silence inside of them, the best part of it is the healing part of it. But you cannot heal unless you start releasing. So,
absolutely.
Boom, go ahead, let's get it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a couple things I wanted to talk about or mention and let be known or whatever, because it happens unfortunately with males, young males and young females as well. You grow up in such a tight-knit community, and the issues aren't talked about. And then when people get older, they just go on through life, and then you wonder why you have people out here who get into these relationships and they're abusive, or they're on edge, or they're reserved and stuff like that, because I'm sure you can agree to that being sexually active or being intimate with your partner, it's not a bad thing. And sex in itself is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
It's just how it's exposed to people and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's something that's important.
Absolutely.
People need to accept, like, sex is not bad, it's how it's presented.
Exactly.
So if it's presented in a negative light at a young age, it can have some traumatizing effects. And if it's not something that you can deal with, or you take to a therapist or something like that to talk about, it can have some really long-term effects. And you got researchers out here that's not Muslim that talk about these things. A lot of people don't like to hear what Dr. Umar Johnson got to say, but if you actually tap in and listen to what the brother is talking about, he's really talking about some real powerful things. I was listening to one of his dissertations, and he was talking about that everybody had these masks. And
that's so true.
They can fall off.
They can. They will fall off.
You know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, you know, a year, whatever the case may be. And it's not necessarily always a oh so bad thing, but sometimes those masks, once they fall off, you're like, wow, this is not the person who I sought out to be in the beginning. And then you, as an individual, have to find out whether or not you want to continue to put up with that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, he went into talking about, you know, sometimes in a Muslim community, when women are getting hit and beat on a consistent basis, unfortunately, they'll go to an imam who is not a therapist, has no kind of clinical training, anything of the sort, and he'll counsel the couple and say, oh, well, you know, y'all need to pray a little bit more together, and y'all need to do this a little bit more together. But it still don't knock the fact that he just put a knot on his wife's head,
right?
You know what I mean? Because of, I don't know, maybe she didn't do this right, or maybe she didn't do that right.
Sexually assaulted his wife.
And that's what I'm saying, because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, is it okay for him to say no? I mean, for her to say no? Is it
Yeah.
okay for him to say no? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes we gotta understand that it's a difference between, you know, somebody saying no, because you know you can role play or whatever,
Yeah.
and somebody just saying outright no.
Right.
No can mean no in a marriage
Absolutely.
too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And people don't think about that stuff. Maybe this person is going through something throughout that day, and they want to be reserved before they can open up. But if you're the kind of person that say, well, no, I don't want you to be reserved. I want it, and I want this now, and
Right.
you have to give in to me. That can be a form of sexual trauma too, because you're
Yeah.
forcing that person to give in when they don't want to give in.
Yeah. And you know, one of the first things that I learned, not one of the first things, but one of the first pieces or ingredients to sexual trauma for me when it came to Islam was being in class in the 6th grade and hearing that if you do not, if you turn your husband away sexually from the bed, that the angels leave you for 3 nights. And I remember as young as I was confused because I was just like, well, why the angels gonna leave you? You know, as a kid, I was new to Islam, you know, and we talked the other day about how much a blessing your mother was to me, and your mother, you know, she truly was like my angel in that time. And I remember running to the office to ask her what that meant. Like, why the angels gonna leave you? She was like, girl, go to class. The angels is not leaving you. Girl, go to class. But for me, I was so fixated on like, why would angels leave me? Because I was always taught that the angels would protect me. Mm-hmm. So I went to another sister that I won't name, and asked, you know, was that true? And she's like, yes. If you know, you can't not sleep with your husband. You can't not be deny your husband. That's what it is. You can't deny your husband intimacy. And I was like, what? And I just was trying to figure out, well, why are we even learning this in the 6th grade when I was just learning fractions last year in the elementary school and public school? So why are we now learning this? And that created a trauma for me because even now at this age that I am, this young age, I still remember that, and I remember as a child being confused, being scared. You know, it put a trauma in me. You know, so that's something slight compared to a lot of other things that I endured and other people endure.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll jump right into this story. All
okay.
right. You know, and it is involving 2 Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And a young brother had came to me, and he was pretty much telling me how, you know, it's just 2 Muslims, and he's over another Muslim brother's house.
Okay.
And while he's over there, he tells me that he straight up and down he gets molested. You know, this is what happened. He gets raped by an older Muslim brother. And when you're young and you're hearing this and people come to you and they're venting to you about these stories and stuff like that, you gotta ask yourself, what do you say to somebody like that? Like, what do you say to somebody like that?
Yeah.
Like, as a young child and something like that happens, what do you say?
So can I ask, is that something that was just shared with just kids, or was that something that was taken to an adult?
I think maybe it was taken to some people, but I don't think that information was shared to a responsible adult. I don't think that that was information that was shared. I think that was something that was held, and that was something that someone had confided. It's rough hearing it, right?
I am a little bad. I don't even know. Like, I have so many.
So that's what I'm saying. So can you imagine someone 10 years, you're about 25, right?
Absolutely.
So can you imagine someone 10 to 15 years coming to you, a 10-year-old child coming to you, and they're telling you, hey, I just stayed the night over this person's house and this happened, how do you tell that person, hey, you need to go and run and say something to somebody?
Yeah, so
Like it's hard. So
it is
sometimes
hard.
what happens is that person will then, you have to inform that person like, hey, you gotta seek help at some point in time, because you can't go through your life
Yeah.
having this under your shoulder,
Yeah.
right? And then I'll get deeper in it.
Yeah. I'm gonna
And
just say, because
then-
you asked the question first, of what do you say to the child,
Right.
right? And I think it's important that children understand that another child cannot help you, right?
Mhm.
It's okay to vent. It's okay to find comfort and peace in another child, especially your friend, your sister, your sibling, your cousin, another Muslim, or another person, period. I just want to just touch this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and address that, because often we're afraid as a child. You could be afraid of what an adult may think or what an adult may say. We often are afraid as kids that we won't get in trouble. Even if it's something bad that happened to us, we're afraid that we're going to get in trouble. And if it comes to a point where you feel like, oh, I'm comfortable enough to say something to another child, that's a beautiful thing, right? But understanding that that child is not going to be able to truly help you, because that child doesn't have the power to help you to process what has happened, to heal from what has happened. And not that we think, and I'm speaking to children right now from an adult who was a child who suffered silently about sexual trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, for me, my goal wasn't for the person to be punished, right? My goal was for the person to never do it again to someone else. I didn't know how that could happen. I didn't know what to do. I just thought, how can I stop that person from ever doing it to somebody else? So for kids, for a child, they may be thinking that too. Like, that happened to them, so let me tell somebody, let me tell another kid, and now maybe something's going to happen. The only way there could be any type of anything to happen is if you talk to an adult, a trusted adult, and
Right.
being comfortable enough to be able
But
to
see,
have that conversation with an
I
adult.
think even me coming up and this information coming to me, I think that how, like, during those times, that wasn't like, I'm not saying that particular incident with those people, whatever, but when you have these things happening and they're not addressed at a young age, and then this little boy becomes a young adult, and then this teenager, young man, whatever the case, becomes a grown man, and then what happens is they marry into different families and stuff like this in the community and stuff like that. I mean, like, this story happened inside our community
Oh wow.
of Baltimore
wow.
City,
Oh wow.
but it was never addressed. Then the adult, goes and get married and have a child or whatever case, marry into family, because then when you look at it, you look like, okay, well, these were two males.
Right.
One male took advantage of the little boy, and then they both get older, but then this happened inside of the house of another Muslim. So then you gotta ask yourself, well, where were the Muslim parents? Like, and this is why it's important, like...
So this is an older sibling, not an adult. Because when you said older, honestly, I was thinking in my mind, like, is the person shielding the adult? Are they protecting the adult?
No, I mean...
So this is really a child. This is another child, but just an older child that did something to another child.
For lack of better terms, yeah.
Okay.
And that's how deep it gets. But the still thing is, even now as a young man myself, I am somewhat, when you hear stories like this, I become somewhat cautious of, okay, like it's very select people, even now, I don't let my child go over this person's house and this person, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then now that we're more outspoken and stuff like that, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But then when you look at that story, you're like, okay, well, that happened, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever the case may be. Then what about the stories which you hear like most recently, whatever, when a guy who had apparently was married, I don't know if he came from New Jersey or he came from Philly or came from Delaware or whatever, who was actually mad. And apparently he was molesting his stepdaughter. And it wasn't like a one-time occurrence or whatever. It was a multiple-time incident. So it's like, you know, it's almost like I personally have to remind people all the time, like, hey, it's the religion, it's not the people. The people are no different than if you see some of these.
It's the people, not the religion.
Right. You know, you got some of these, you know, priests, Catholics, you know, rabbis, stuff like that. They up on these high mountains and they be running around here doing things, and it's like, oh, well, it's different than you covering the fault. Maybe you smoke, but when you're actually doing something to affect a child who can go up and still have that weight over their shoulders, like these are some heavy things. And unfortunately, this community, they don't, like I personally feel growing up, like a lot of things that got out of hand, whether it dealt with the court system, whether somebody lost their life, whether somebody got beat up, stuff like that. Like we need to be more open about these things. So that these things don't happen to the next generation or whatever that comes up or whatever. But unfortunately, yes, that's just like that's one of many stories, and I'm sure, you know, as time goes on this evening, we're going to be discussing other stories and how to tackle them. But again, when it happens inside of a Muslim home, and one Muslim is raped or molested by another Muslim, how do you say, okay, you should go to an adult or whatever? How do you expose that individual, or your opinion on how do you expose that individual, as well as exposing the fact that this happened at a Muslim household? And this is not just, from what I'm told, this is just not a regular Muslim household. This is someone who's prominent inside of the city.
Oh my God.
So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So like, that's why these things need to be talked about. Like it grows and it gets deeper and stuff like that. So to share that story, it's like, okay, then what happens or whatever. I mean, you got older guys out here seeking to wed younger girls, and what they don't realize is that, yo, when you go here in the country, right, in our country, the young girls here are not like the young girls in another country. Understand that. When you're dating, it's not the same. You know what I mean? And that's when you gotta start to look like, how do you, as a young man, seek to violate a young boy, especially if you're supposed to be on Quran and Sunnah? How do you, as an old man, look at a kid who's, you know, 9 and 10 and she's developed, and you just jump right into, like, how do you find that satisfying?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I didn't want to be one, right? But I'm glad you brought that up. We are, because I just want to know. I wanted to know from a man's perspective, you know, how a man would think that would be okay as well, especially, and you said the age of 9. You know, one of the hard things for me to digest religiously when it comes to Islam is that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was able to marry Aisha at 9 years old. I believe in my heart that is what gives Muslim men the okay to, because every Muslim man's goal is to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know. So if the Prophet, you know, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was able to marry Aisha at 9, then why can't I? And that should be my goal too. And that to me is, you know, may Allah forgive me if I'm speaking ill in this moment, but I'm speaking for the 9-year-old me that was molested and raped. And for every 9-year-old and child under the age of 18 that is not developed yet, that has not even reached their full maturity or because they become, as Muslim women, as soon as we get our menses, we are marriable. And that's absolutely insane to me. And, may Allah forgive me if I'm speaking wrong, but I can speak proudly and say, at 14, I was not ready to be married. At 14, I was a child. At 9, I was not ready to have sex. I was a child. At 10, I was a child. At 10, I was excited about being Muslim and being around Muslims and in a Muslim community, but I was put in a Muslim community that looked at me sexually. I was overly sexualized from the moment I stepped into the Muslim community by the men and the women. So I believe it was given, it gives permission to men to look at a 9-year-old that way because they want to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not to say that he had the same intentions that every other man does that does it, but he did it. That's it and that's all. He did it, and it's looked upon and it's glorified, and it's what I've been taught and learned about from the moment I stepped into, Islam. So it's hard to me to even have that conversation. I've never had that conversation with another man, especially not a Muslim man. But for you to bring that up, like for Muslim men to look at younger women, they have already been given permission, because the Muslim man that they are looking up to and the Muslim man that they are wanting to be most like, he did that. And even I think, because my mother and I used to have this conversation, and I may be quoting wrong, but you could correct me if I'm wrong, or whoever's watching can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think he married Aisha at 9, but he had to wait to be intimate with her until she was like 12, because she wasn't even on her menses yet. She wasn't even. So even the thought of that rocks me to the core, because I know what it's like to have somebody into me at 9. I know what it's like to have somebody into me at 12. I know what that's like. So there's no way anything in this world could ever make that okay for me. So, but if we wanna, because I'm not trying to get all worked up and emotional, so I apologize. But it's like to me, Muslim men are just given the okay. And you have stories, of course. You said, like you said, I have stories. I have heard some of the worst stories in the Muslim community about Muslim men from Muslim families that are hierarchies in the Muslim community. If you're in the Muslim community of Baltimore, you know who the prominent families are. And I know a prominent family where the eldest, the hierarchy, was the one molesting all of the women in the family. How dare you, right? We could say, how dare you? But no one stopped it. No one addressed it. And when it came to the face front, everybody hushed it. Everybody calmed it down. And that person was allowed to continue to be in the Muslim community as he was and stay up here no matter what he did. So again, you've given an okay to every Muslim man who follows that Muslim man. Because this Muslim brother is up here. So if we know he raped the whole family, he raped the whole salute. So he did it and he got away with it. Why can't I? Because I want to be like my elders. I want to be like the Muslim men that have raised me, that I'm following. So to me, if there was a stop put, if there was a conversation to be had, we joked last week about the barbershop, right? The barbershop is where the men are. If the men were in the barbershop and the Muslim men went in the barbershop and had a conversation with other Muslim men about why not to do that, because I'm sure somebody's going to tell, somebody should bring it. Oh, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he married Aisha at 9, but this is why he did it, and this is the outcome of it, and this is the good of it, and this is the. The reality is he married her at 9. Let's be real. You got a daughter. Do you want her married at 9? Absolutely not. So if you sit in a barbershop and have real conversations, if Muslim men sit in a barbershop and have real conversations with other Muslim men about why not to do those things, yeah, the Prophet did it. Alhamdulillah. Allah knows best. Allahu A'lam. But let's be real. In this day and time, no, that's not something that should happen.
Let me interject and say this for a second, okay?
I brought the bees to calm myself down. Let me use the bees, okay? Subhanallah.
So let me say this, right? It, like, you know, as you and I talked before, whatever, people don't want, you know, me on here with you, and, you know, they don't want us talking about the topics that, you know, we need to talk about. It doesn't, it doesn't change, like, my feelings towards you, you know what I mean, on that kind of level. Did I say that publicly? Okay. So, the problem is, you know, because I don't have the intellect of that aspect of the deen to, like, go into that. However, I will with 100% certainty say that there's not one guy, especially not here in this community, that's even halfway, that was me, halfway on that level. Halfway on that level of righteousness. So, you know, yes, Islam, you know, puts him as the best example of man, okay? No doubt. I'm going to say it again, because maybe they didn't hear me. It's not, I'm certain that it is not no guy walking that's halfway on that level. So for you, as a man, to think that you have the emotional, the spiritual, that intellect, whatever it may be, bruh, you ain't got it. That you are on some straight up and down other stuff. I have 2 little girls. You know, I got homeboys that got girls. You know, you got girls and they close to me. Bruh, don't think once, don't think twice. Just don't think. And don't let it be projected to me.
Okay.
Because then you and I are going to have a problem. My level of understanding is not there. And in this society, you have people that prey on the young and the weak. And oftentimes, this is that story that I told earlier, that's the problem. These guys be out here and, you know, you wearing this, I got those, I got kufis, I don't have to dress like that. I don't dress like I'm from another country. This is how Muslim men dress here in this country. I don't know why people think that you have to dress like this to be like this, because not everybody who wear thobe or wear kameez or wear kufi is Muslim. That's a fact. Okay. That is a fact. And I say all that to circle back to say, don't think once, don't think twice. Just don't even think it, and don't certainly project it, because you're not halfway on that level. So for you to come to me and to say, hey, I want to talk to you about pause. Now you can talk to this guy right here. If that's what you know, if that's more comfortable for you, you can talk to this guy. Mm-hmm. But that's not what we're going, because see, another thing is too, as a man, why would you, and I already know somebody gonna go somewhere and spend this, but whatever. As a man, why would you want to seek somebody who is not even, like you said, at that level of maturity, both physically and mentally? Why would you even want that? Mm-hmm. So that you can what? Is a saying that my friend always speak about. He called it emotional manipulation.
Oh, let's see.
And I feel like because you have some inadequacies as a man, that's why you would want to marry a girl that's 16 years old, a girl that's 15 years. Because what would be the other reason for you to do that?
Exactly.
In today's society, what would be the reason for you to want to...
The reality is that it's just giving them again the okay to be a pedophile. You're really just a pedophile. And that's just giving the permission to be a pedophile.
But I understand that. But that's the problem, and I agree with you. Brothers need to shut that down, but you got women who are ignorant, who say, okay, well, you know, you 43 years old, you know, you 35 years old. You know, I saw this little time lapse one time on social media where this guy, he was like 10, 15 years older, give or take. You know, maybe eight. Let's just say 8. And they went back, and it was like, oh, okay, you know, he 42, you know, she 30, whatever. Oh, okay, he 30, whatever. You know, she 20, whatever. Then it went back the way he was like 28, and she was fucking 18, and then it went back again, and she was like fucking 17, and this nigga was 24. So it's like, goddamn, like you up here and you worrying about bills and she's still worrying about homework, bro. Something wrong with that picture. But again, the problem is, like I said, it's something wrong with these individuals. Because, like you said, there is no excuse. You can't say, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to follow in this. Bro, that's not what you're trying to do.
At all.
Go get yourself a grown woman, but again, it's the inadequacies of these men of today, because you feel as though, like I said, I think I told on another episode, we were talking about the story that came to me about the sister who was with her, she married the dude, and she did it the right way. Now, I don't know if she was 100% married before or whatever the case may be, but it was so much so that the sister was like, she had to intoxicate herself in order to be physically involved because the guy had a small penis. That's traumatizing, I can imagine, for women. If you know what I mean? Like, you up there and you know what I mean? Like, you ain't even on it. Like, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm not making the story up. Again, my position, a lot of times I'll be talking to people, or people will come to me and ask me questions, and then I'll go to someone, possibly an imam, who knows more knowledge than me, which most of them, a lot of them do. I'm not an imam. So I'll go and say, hey, here's a story that came to me. What advice do you think I should give? Because the first thing that popped in my head is, I don't need to go to the imam. If that man got a little penis, what more? I mean, like, and you feel like you gotta intoxicate yourself to get to that point. But that's what I'm saying.
That's a bit much.
The problem is, nobody is being straight about this stuff, and that's why a lot of people disagree with the brother, Dr. Umar. I don't. I agree with him. Sometimes, some imams, they're giving the wrong information, because you need to be telling these sisters, yo, this brother ain't doing it right in the bed. This brother is abusive. This brother wants me to do this. This is not, I mean, sister talk about, you know, guys, we want to do this. Yo, some of that stuff ain't cool. But how do you tackle that? You tackle that by discussing these issues, and they're not discussing these issues on these members. They not. They just talking about everything else. We want to pour in hundreds of thousands of dollars. We need to pour in money to get this. But hold on, stop. Talk about that brother who 32 years old, and he with that sister who 19 years old, and she on housing, and essentially all she is a piece of ass, because he don't let her go out the house. He don't let her work. She got to cut off all her friends, because, again, I know you know some of these stories. And all he doing is working and coming home, and he's having sex with her. And that's the extent of it. They don't go nowhere. Every time they go out, he want her fully guarded down with a whole abaya on and a niqab or whatever. He don't want nobody to see his wife. Meanwhile, he running around here, knocking her up, putting babies in her, and he got her on Section 8 and stuff like that. And again, I get it. Some people got to use housing or whatever, but these are stepping stones. But you've been married to that sister for 10 years. How much of a damn stepping stone you need? At some point in time, you got to, as friends, you know, some sisters with those kind of friends, you got to talk to that sister and be like, sister, I don't want to tell you to walk away from that situation, but that brother is mistreating you, because that's another form of abuse.
Well, sometimes a young sister will, or even brother, but most young sisters, especially the ones that are converting to Islam, are converting to Islam because they are looking for a home. They're looking for acceptance. They're looking for love. And they are willing to accept whatever it is that they get. And they are afraid to let go of whatever it is that they have, because at least they have something. So, and I know back to when I was younger, there was a brother, right? Anybody who came up during my time and went to Manchester, Ohio,
Uh-oh.
my bad.
No, we talking about Baltimore City.
But anybody that went to Manchester, Ohio, right, you will remember this. There is a part of producer. Could you do me a favor and look at
Got
IG
that
for
right
me?
there.
But there's a part in my book where I talk about the bullpen,
Mm-hmm.
and the bullpen is the Musella.
Oh, okay.
And so I call it the bullpen because every Friday it was. I mean, every when you when going to school in a masjid, in a masjid in any mosque, I'm sure you get to come out of class for prayer time.
Yeah.
So prayer time was like walking into the bullpen, but Friday, you already knew you was like fresh meat, you know. And there was a certain brother who used to come every Friday before anybody got to the musalla. We got out of class early enough so that everybody could go make wudu, do whatever they need to do before they even call the first adhan. And this Muslim brother would come and he would be sitting watching the door because our classroom door was to the musalla.
Mm-hmm.
So when we came out our classroom door, we were in the musalla, but he see us first, you know. So this brother would sit there and he would be there every Friday, every prayer time. He drove a cab, but he was always there, right? So it used to be so sickening to have him there. It was like that's why this part is in my book, because it was a part of my fear for grown older men was because of him, how he looked at us, how he smiled at us, how he would watch us. It was like he would just be in amazement. I spoke to older Muslims about it, and it was like, oh, that's brother such and such, you know, oh, pass it off, you know. I speak about him and in this situation, in this moment, because there was a sister who was not Muslim, and she was 14. She was like 2 years older than me at the time. I think I was 12. And I used to see her, and I was like, oh my gosh, this girl is so pretty. She had a bad situation at home. Her mom was like on drugs, and she didn't have a father, so we ended up being friends to a point where she was comfortable with telling me what was going on in her life. One day she invited me down to her house, and she was like, I'm talking to this Muslim brother. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, a man, a grown man? And she was like, yeah, I think I'm going to marry him. And I was like...
And she's 14.
She's 14. She's not Muslim.
Here we go with these inadequacies.
She's 14. She's not Muslim.
Here we go.
And she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to marry him. So I'm like, you gonna marry a grown man? And I'm like, don't do it. Like, you know, I'm telling her about my story. Like, listen, they always tell me I need to get married. Like, don't do it. Like, you so pretty. Like, you don't have to do this. And she was like, well, my mom, you know, the living situation was really bad. And she just felt like this person was promising her the world, and he was going to take care of her. She was never going to want for anything. He was going to get her a house. I mean, all this other kind of stuff. So I stopped seeing her for a while, and I was like, Dad, what happened to her? And I would knock on her door, wouldn't get no answer. I'm thinking maybe she ran away, because I'm still seeing this brother every salat time, every Friday. And about 6 months later, she popped up and she was pregnant and she was fully hijab. And I was like, you Muslim? And she was like, yeah. She was so sad. She was like, yeah, and I married brother da-da-da, you know. And I was like, that's who you were talking about the whole entire time? And she was like, yeah. It was the brother who always was at the masjid, always there for every salat time, always there for every Jummah, watching all of us young girls come out of the classroom. He had married this young girl, made her Muslim, and now she was pregnant. Fast forward, unfortunately, this sister ended up getting heavily on drugs. The brother left her. He took the baby, and he ended up moving out of the country. And I don't know where she is today, but I know she was doing really bad the last time I heard about her. And so that was one of those stories for me that always set like on my heart, because the brother asked to marry me, and I remember talking to my dad about him and telling my dad, like, something is wrong with him because he's watching all of us, all the time, like, something is wrong with him. And my dad was like, really, like, okay, well, then, my dad was, everybody know I got married at 14. My dad wanted to save my soul immediately. Like, don't go to the hellfire. Don't be out here in the streets. So, but once I told him how uncomfortable that brother made me, it was just, it was the end of the day. It was off the table. But that could have been me. You know what I mean? Like, if my dad didn't listen to me.
And when you think about those kind of, those stories like that, I mean, that's why I'm over here, like, you know what I'm saying? Just a little bit.
Sad.
It is that, and like the thought, like, okay, so, I'm heavy into like security and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when I go out to places, whatever, people always think it's weird for me to, like, sit a certain way and to park like this and to position myself as and it's like, I'm just constantly in that mindset. So like even now, like when I have to be somewhere and stuff like that, if I can bring on a female to deal with the women, I can. Because whereas though I may be able to trust myself, I can't trust these guys.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, okay, I know for a fact, but some people just are like that.
Yeah.
And I would rather somebody be like, okay, this was a woman-on-woman interaction or whatever, as opposed to, the way he broke up the fight, he grabbed me here. Because I be thinking about all kinds of those things. And that's why it's important for our sisters now here in Baltimore, you know what I mean, to get hip and to become mindful of these training sessions and stuff like that are being held in the city and stuff like that, so that y'all can step up to the plate and actually start authentically coming to Juma, and you'll still get the blessings for doing security, but it's probably more comfortable for the women that you have a sister on the sister side that's doing security.
Yeah.
But that is just like mind blowing.
And that's just one. That's just one.
Okay.
That's just one. I mean, I'm not flooding y'all tonight with stories, but I'm just saying that's just one. And the only reason I spoke about that story is because, to piggyback off what you were just saying about, a sister that may be with a brother who may not be doing her right, but he got her because he wants her sexually, but he's not taking care of her. He's not teaching her Islam. He's not, like, it would have been a beautiful ending to the story, because the story was ugly from the beginning.
Right.
But it would have been a beautiful ending to the story if that brother really took that sister on because she had a bad situation. Because I'm sure, because the way he met her, that's why I said he drove a cab. He met her because he picked her up in a cab. So that's how they met, and it would have been beautiful if he had really took care of her, went got her a house. That brother did not have the money to do any of that. He was giving her false hope and false promises, and then he married her young as she was, and then unfortunately things did not go good. But it would have been nice if it was a good ending to that story. And what I do know is that the last time I heard about the sister, she had went and got saved. Like somebody had found her on the street and they took her to a church and she got saved and they were trying to help her. That's the last thing I heard from her. So again, it didn't even end. Well, not end because, inshallah, she's doing well today. But it went from bad to worse, and then she left Islam and went and became a Christian because of that.
So let me ask you this. Do you think, and I think the other day when we was having an off-the-show conversation, it was a pretty good conversation too, and we were talking, do you believe that sometimes, and let me be clear, I'm not like justifying, anything that took place or whatever, any stories or whatever, because all these stories are horrific, and I actually pray to the Most High that these people get their punishment in this life and in the hereafter, and if they are already passed on and deceased, I pray to the Most High that they're being tortured in their graves right now. I want to say this, do you believe, based off the conversation that we had, based off of that story that you just gave, do you feel like there are some instances, I'm not defending anybody, I'm genuinely asking a question as a woman, do you feel like in some instances that some of these people who are young they need to be molded into being that better person. However, the problem is instead of men coming along, because even today, as a man in this community, I see certain things and I'm like, well, why niggas ain't just mold yo into being a better version of herself? Like, you had to trash short, like, why you just didn't, like, do you believe that some instances like that are happening as opposed to the latter? Like, instead of them trying to mold, let's say we all know what a dummy is. If you ain't from Baltimore, it's a scallywag, skip, scab, doo-dah, whatever you want to call it. It's a chick that you get a Lucy from. You know, in the words of my man, it's, you know, a woman who performs fellatio. But what I'm saying is this. Do you feel like that in some of these instances, brothers are seeing these young women as, obviously they look at them as targets, but do you feel like they're just not having any sort of genuine joy? It's coming from a totally evil space, and they're just looking to just say, I just want to fuck this chick and be done with her, or I just want to keep on doing, like, I want to use her as an object, as opposed to trying to make her better so that we can be better. Talk to me.
First I want to just say, with the first part of your question, because you said could they be molded, right?
Yeah, like it's...
So, unfortunately, instead of having a community full of Muslim women, and I say full of, that means that doesn't mean that there aren't any good Muslim women in the community.
Absolutely.
But this community is full of sad, miserable, broken sisters and brothers, but the sisters are just like they say Baltimore is the crab city where there are crabs in a barrel. The sisters
I co-sign that statement.
The sisters are the same. The sisters are like crabs in a barrel, and everybody is trying to claw everybody down instead of everybody trying to help everybody, teach each other, uplift each other. I talk a lot about how my first thought of the Muslim community was going to be like Malcolm X.
Yeah.
And how all the Muslim women look so...
Yeah,
I got here and I was like, oh, this is not Malcolm X movie. This is something different, okay?
Yes,
I'm a little confused. I don't see smiling faces. I see sisters that want to punch me in the mouth. Like, it was different. So... that's how the Muslim community is here in Baltimore. You don't have, and that's not just, it wasn't. I don't know too much about I can't say what's going on right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not up in the fold. But growing up in the Baltimore Muslim community, that's not what it was. You had bullies and hijabs, which is why I have bullies and hijabs coming out as well. You have bullies and hijabs.
Hashtag that.
Okay, hashtag that. Bullies and hijabs, because they weren't from the mothers to the sisters, to the daughters, to the nieces. It was a clique. And if you were not born and you didn't come up in the clique, my mom explained to me how Masjid al-Haq started as Walter Omar. And under Warf D. Muhammad, I think, and how it was Nation of Islam first, and then it went over to Sunni Muslims. And so if you weren't in that clique of the Muslims who were there from the start, and you didn't migrate over, and you came in, you was getting bullied, okay? So you can't get molded into a sister like the sister who was 14 that literally lived 2 blocks from the masjid, that instead of coming to the masjid and getting the sister to help her, because she came to the masjid before she took her shahada.
She didn't live in the infamous Carver Hall, did she?
No. Woo! That's a whole nother episode. That's another episode.
Carver Hall. You know.
you know. No, but she lived on Drew Hill. So,
okay.
2 blocks away from the masjid. She said when she came to the masjid, the sister just was like looking at her crazy. And I was like, I told you. Like, you should have called me so I could have went with you. But I speak about that again because you said, could they be molded? She could have been molded. She could have been welcomed in. If we had a community in Baltimore City of Muslim women, Muslim sisters who were truly sisters, who were like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's wives, like Khadijah, and if we had sisters that were like that, that were looking at other sisters as sisters and not looking at other sisters as competition because they thought that they might want their husband, but they knew that their dirty husbands was probably gonna want them. If they weren't looking at it like that, then that sister could have been molded. That sister could have been saved. That sister ain't have to go out here and get addicted to heroin. She didn't have to go out here. She didn't have to think that brother that was driving that dirty, raggedy ass cab was her savior. She would have known. If she would have came and had, because we talked about in the beginning of the show how a child will go to another child, but that child really can't help them. She came to me, but I was a broken child trying to figure out what the hell I was in at the time myself. So I couldn't help her. So another older sister could have taken her. But you had older sisters in the mansion that was looking at everybody sideways. Not everybody. Looking at me and women and sisters that are young like her because she was beautiful. She was beautiful. She was just like me. Like when you're developed and you're young and you're pretty and you got a body, then older sisters, younger sisters, their daughters, nieces, and cousins is looking at you like, oh, who is this? As opposed to saying, like, I remember one time, you remember we used to have, like Eid and not just Eid. It wasn't just Eid. Nowadays, every time Muslims get together in a park, is for the Eid. But back then, there used to be things. No, not Dawa night. My mother loved Dawa night. Okay, that was good.
Again, if you know, you know. National Hot back in the day, Dawa night.
That was Sister Joy cooking. That was good. But no, they used to have like functions in parks, like Carroll Park, like things like that. Not Carroll Park? What's the park over East Baltimore? But there's a park over East Baltimore off of Hartford Road that we were. Yeah. So we had a function there one time, and there was some sisters that came from out of town. And I never forget, like I didn't want to really speak to anybody. I was there because my mother wanted me to be there. And I went into the bathroom and I was standing in the corner. I'm like, let me wait till everybody finished. And this sister took her face veil off and she was like, sister, you okay? And I was like, yeah. She was like, assalamu alaikum, you're so beautiful. She was like, I was in shock. I had never had an older sister speak to me the way this sister was speaking to me. And I was like, are you from here? She was, because I was like, okay, I found one. We in Malcolm X. I was like, are you from here? She was like, no, I'm from Jersey. We just came in. I said, dang! Like, oh my God, but that's how the Muslim sister should be. But instead of being like that, instead of being welcoming and loving and nurturing and being sisterly, everybody is in competition. Everybody has malicious intent. Everybody is looking at everybody sideways, and that is sickening. So you can't mold somebody that's coming into Islam, a younger sister that's coming into Islam, to be a pious Muslima, or to even understand what it is to be a pious Muslima, because you got too many haters, you got too many cliques, you got too much negativity in order for it to be that. So that's why you have situations like that. And as far as the brothers, them just wanting to, them thinking, you ask, do I think that they just have malicious intent, as opposed to the intent of let me mold this sister, let me teach this sister, let me bring this sister. I'm just gonna answer that with one statement. Do you have any? There are none. I'm not even gonna say you have any. There are no stories where an older Muslim man has married a younger Muslim woman and there has been a beautiful situation where he has really taught her Islam, where he has molded her in a beautiful way to where that sister is living beautifully today. I don't know any. Do you?
Is that a cricket? No, so I get what you're saying. Like, essentially, it's like, okay, my bad, Apple just be acting retarded.
Apple said you won't hear me.
So we're not even safe to assume we're not even talking about, I mean, we are talking about that, but we're not even talking about, up until, so you're even going as asking that question as far as even like 18, 19, 20, you 40, 5 years later, y'all up and y'all want to, again, I think I heard a pin drop. Was that you, producer? So again, I'm not saying that, and like you said, and that's why I enjoy this dynamic, because like you said, you chose your words correctly, which was that I heard of. Again, if it's some
You
stories that's there, please inbox us or whatever and
Yeah.
let us know, because I don't know either. And that's why I'm saying, like, it's people intent. Like, I've always wanted to go in 2-3 years later, we building and stuff like that. You know what? We the same age, you're a year, 2 or 3 younger, whatever. Like, I wanted to build, because oftentimes what happened is nowadays it seems like with all the people, now there are some people who I know in my heart, I believe, when they got married, they was here and then they here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's far in food.
Yeah.
But
and is that a super age gap?
Well, no, it's not a super age gap. They're almost, equaled
Exactly.
out. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. That's the point. Like, you don't have that, but we're talking about that age gap. And then when you're looking on the same age, it's very few and in between. And then the problem is that I have sometimes with community is, like, you acting like that, like you said, that sister ain't like that because of what that brother did. Regardless of what he's doing now, if he's still here, whatever, that's not the only situation, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you acting like she ain't out there because if people say, oh, well, it's because of this. Yo, I get it. But when you do something like sexual trauma to someone, it has a tendency to have effect on people. People start to think differently. They start to move differently because, like, oh my God, what is happening to me at a young age? Mm-hmm. Whether it's male or female, it does not matter. No one wants that abuse at that young age. And then when you go out and speak, you got older men who feel like, oh, well, they crazy. Nah, nigga, that's because you've been in a community, whether you here locally or you abroad or whatever the case may be. No, that's because you know about the story and you think your mind is making you believe that this actually happened to this sister. When no, that actually happened. She was traumatized. They should have never married her off at 14, 15, 16, whatever the case may be. They should have never done that. And see, that's my problem.
And there's no protection in the community.
But that's because, like you said, people look here and be like, I'm doing this, my God. No, you have to ask yourself, is that nigga on that level? And is that, because here's the thing. I don't want to touch that because I don't have the knowledge is what I'm saying. I'm talking about our society today. Shouldn't no man be out there doing that? And then the ones that are, I'm telling you, they have some sort of deficiency and that inadequacy within themselves.
Absolutely.
You short, you got this, your hand like this, you got an extra nipple for a man. I don't know, your beard short, you can't grow hair. Who the hell knows or whatever? You got some sort of inadequacy. You're a fella.
Or you just got a fetish and you're just a pedophile. And you're a pedophile.
And they need to be locked up because
you're a pedophile.
You're not gonna walk in front of a court and say, this is my wife at 12 years old or 13. You're not gonna do that. So you're going to keep it under wraps, and that's what I'm saying. So you're going to keep it under wraps, and that's why when you come in the community stuff like that, you see a lot of sisters and stuff like that, and that's why you might even find some of them in in the full out abayas, in the full out niqabs, because they're hiding. It's like, yo, that's like something they want to. Because I used to do transportation, right, and I've seen how it's hidden. You wouldn't know that I'm Muslim or striving to be a good Muslim if I didn't say something to you, whatever. So oftentimes when people get in my car, I don't know what the hell people be on nowadays. So I'm not going to say nothing, and you get into my car and this girl don't look no older than 14 years old. Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? I might say, oh, sorry, where you taking your daughter? Well, how you doing? Where you taking your daughter? And I'm like, oh, well, it's not my daughter. It's my wife. I'm taking her to the... I'm trying to tell you. In transportation, you get them all. In transportation. And it's like, again, like you said, who said something? When you go to the barbershop, Nobody's speaking about. They not speaking about on the mill.
I ain't even been in the barbershop and I know it's not a conversation that's been had. Okay, I'm trying to bring the cameras to the barbershop. If y'all ain't scared, let me bring the cameras to the barbershop.
I think that's something that we can do.
I trust you. I believe you. Okay, because we just need to have a little conversation in the barbershop. So, maybe we can give y'all some conversations.
But since we running up on time, I'm gonna say this, and then you can have it. Yo, if there's a brother out there and you feel like you're around other brothers and they doing something that's borderline that sexual abuse, or sisters, if you're young and you feel like this man is taking advantage of you and your parents may be ignorant or nobody's trying to hear you, the sister, you may not like the person, but you can't deny the effort and the work. It's here. Reach out, because it should not be happening in this day and age. You need to be guided and you need some additional assistance. I'm not here to try to curve somebody's way of thinking. I'm not here to tell somebody that they shouldn't be dealing with this or they should be dealing with this. I'm simply saying the help is here. You gotta reach out. It's not okay. That is not okay at all. And it's happening. And the guys who are violating these children, nigga, you ought to be ashamed. Realistically, you ought to be ashamed.
And women, because I've been hearing these horrific stories about women who are violating young boys as well. And honestly, it's mind-blowing to me. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. What an adult or anybody gets out of violating a child. But I appreciate you for what you just said, because I do understand and I accept and I receive that a lot of people in the community do not like Akira. Well, they do not like or even know Beyonka, but they know of. And a lot of the reasons why people tend to not like a person sometimes is because of what they heard, what somebody told them, and the things and the perception that has been displayed. See, the narrative has been placed in the community about who I am and what I represent, because there came a point in time when I was no longer silent. And once I started using my voice, it didn't stop the voices that were telling lies and making up things about me.
No, it didn't.
But it definitely didn't. But
you talk
it made
out of mouth, so you crazy.
Basically, right. It was like, oh, okay, she just crazy. See what I'm saying? It was like, see, look, I told you she crazy. See, look, I told you she this. And because I live out loud unapologetically, especially now more than anything, it also helps the narrative that they have placed in the community about me. And that's okay with me, because Allah knows best. But one thing for sure and two for certain is
Say that last part.
Allah knows best. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Allah knows best. You know.
As they say, hello.
Okay. My favorite is Allahu Alam. Like, I'm not about to argue with you about who I am. I'm not about to argue with you to convince you of who I am. I'm going to introduce myself to you. I love reintroducing myself to people, because sometimes you may think you know me, but maybe you don't. So in this moment, I'm going to reintroduce myself to everybody and allow you to know who I am. I am Akira. And I'm also known as Beyonka. And Allah has blessed me to make it through some very hard times in my life. He's allowed me to acknowledge the child that suffered in silence inside of me, which has allowed me to be able to create this outreach center that we're sitting in today. I have opened my doors, my heart, my home, and Allah has blessed me with the knowledge to be able to help young people to be able to find their voice. Not even just young people. I have older people that come to me all the time that need help with finding their voice. They have a story that they want to tell, and they need to understand how to process their pain. And by Allah's mercy, Allah has blessed me to be able to help people through that. So I'm not somebody that has gone through test trials and tribulations that's like holding on to it and angry about it and bitter about it. I'm somebody who has gone through test trials and tribulations, who is still processing, but also helping others to process as well. And that is all I'm really offering to everybody else who is looking to get help. Children, if you are going through any type of trauma, any type of uncomfortableness, and that's a word I'm making up right now, but it's real, because you could be uncomfortable because there are things that are happening to you that you don't understand. The voice of children suffering in silence is open to you. This platform that we're sitting on right now, I'm having us sit in this space right now because I will be doing weekly shows for the voice of children suffering in silence as well. So you could come, tell your story, and allow others to hear your story and hear how you've gone through things and triumphed through it, or even going through something as an adult, and share it with the world so that we can see that it's okay to break your silence. It's okay to be heard. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Absolutely. And your story can help somebody else. So, thank you.
The producer, that eye's not lazy no more, so I think they coming back. they was climbing that ladder, and now I think they coming down.
I see
so
too.
I think it might be time.
And I heard a little click, and it ain't clicking up in the bed. So they was like, oh, okay, yeah. You know what? This is nice that you want to save the world and everything, right. But
it's time to shut it
I'm
down.
trying to see where Snoop Dogg at.
I'm gonna say this, and the producer, we're gonna be tapping out, whatever. Again, we appreciate everybody for tuning in once again. If it's a story that want to be said, go right ahead. Just tap right into that story. Reach out to us through the messages and stuff like that. Both our information is on here, whether you feel comfortable speaking to her or me, and vice versa. And if you see me in the community or something like that, you can. My door's open. You can always pull me up and say, "Hey, I need to speak to you about something," and I'll direct you in a proper way or whatever. We don't know what next week's topic is going to be about yet.
We don't know yet. No.
But we're working on it. So we're going to give y'all some fire, and I'm going to hand it over to the host because the producer, I'm telling you, her eyes was here, right? Her eyes was here, and them joys like,
yeah,
so I don't know if it's the coffee or she need to go mow some more lawn or something because she off of it. But I'm going to give it to the host.
She done stood up twice, and the second time she stood up, she did the tilt head like, now listen. Okay, we heard you. Trauma is trauma. Okay.
Right.
But I'm grateful that you were opening up, especially as a man, to be able to have this conversation with me tonight and with the world about trauma. And we will definitely have more conversations about trauma and how to heal from it. And prayerfully, we'll have some therapists, because I know you may know some therapists in the community. So we could bring them on, and they can come and offer their services to those who need therapy. Therapy is important. It's necessary, and it's an essential ingredient to the recipe of healing. So don't be afraid to get therapy. So hopefully next week we'll have some therapists who can come on as well. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I see that there's a lot of messages on the left-hand side. The producer is sick right now, y'all. She keeps trying to hit the end button.
She's about to knock over the cameras and everything. She like, you know what? I ain't doing this.
I swear, I just want to say this last thing. I can't get it out. Why are you making me laugh? No, but seriously, please know that I'm going to address all of those questions and stuff like that. Let me let the producer in. But y'all, thank you for tuning in tonight. Good night. Make sure you hit that share button. And then she goes.
Instead of starting with the right,
Why you start with the